Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Living on Music. I'm Steve Houk, and could not be happier again to see everybody out there this evening for what I am really looking forward to, a show that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it was great to be able to get my guest tonight, Lisa Berigan, who is the midday host on Big 100, classic rock station in Washington, has been a fixture for 15 years, over 15 years here in Washington, as a radio personality, as a music lover, as a music aficionado, and a perpetual pusher of rock and roll music, and just incredible. And this, where you see behind me, is Pier 6 Pavilion in Baltimore, and is one of Lisa's favorite venues. It is now known as the MICU Pavilion, which is the Municipal Employees Credit Union, who took control of it a few years ago. But it is, again, indicative of Lisa's very wide swath of music history that she has across the years. And we are going to have a wonderful time talking to her about her history in music and radio, and also how she feels the last year has gone for, being a person who knows musicians and knows the music world. I feel we have that in a kinship because we're both kind of close to music, and you can really see what it's done. But again, we're both feeling elated too that we're coming out of it. So that's wonderful. But Lisa Berigan will join me very, very soon. I will get right to her in a moment. Always just want to give a shout out to the Living on Music page. Why not, if I can? And we're doing great. Over 455 members, going strong. If you have people who love music, and also you want to share some of these interviews with them, this is an easy way to do it. They're always posted on there. If you go to my livingonmusic.com website, which I'd love people to visit, it's got a long collection of interviews that I've done with some of the world's most incredible musicians. If you go down and go down to genres or you click anything in search and you're able to go down and look, I think you'll really enjoy it. And it also has all of the Living on Music stuff for this show. You can get the invite for the upcoming show. And you can also get a link to all of the past Living on Music episodes. So that's really, really something fun to see. Well, at the beginning of my college years, back a nice feet ago, 40 years or so, although journalism was my main focus, I had fleeting dreams of being a DJ, a disc jockey. I was already a huge music fan. I'd been influenced by my incredible music-loving parents, but also by disc jockeys at mainly WNEW-FM, which was 40 minutes south of my Connecticut house. Scott Muni, Allison Steele, Dave Herman, Pat St. John, Dennis Elsas, Carol Miller. They were very influential in my music love, as well as I-95 FM out of Danbury, which was right north of Wilton, where I grew up with DJs like Buzz Knight and others like that. And eventually one of my closest friends, my dearest friend in high school, my roommate in college in Boston from Connecticut, Tim Lidster, became a DJ at I-95 and had a 20-year plus career as a DJ in Baltimore, Allentown, and eventually out in Phoenix, Arizona. We lost him about 6 months ago to cancer. And so every time he comes up, we think of him. So we loved you, Tim. But he was my best buddy as a DJ. And he used to leave our apartment in Boston and drive down to Danbury, do overnight shifts Friday and Saturday on I-95, and then drive back to college, take a long nap, and then we jump back into life as college students. But it was always amazing to see his disc jockey career going like that. DJing was very near and dear to me. I actually became one at BU, eventually a music director at WTBU, the carrier music station on campus where Howard Stern cut his teeth at the beginning of his career. And I had a blast. I remember doing cram jams of music, and it was a blast to do that. But my career really ended up on a different path. It was the one I had started on journalism. And today I've had a pretty good run, 37 and a half years, a couple of Emmys, producer, director, writer, and an executive in Washington for the last 25 years. And it's been an amazing run. But luckily, I've been able to keep music very, very close to my soul. During my time in the DC area, I've come to know a host of radio personalities, good friends now with people like Surf Colwell, buddies with Jack Diamond, work colleagues with the Elliot Siegel and Tommy McFly and others, TV colleagues with Hillary Howard of TOP, and now Mark Seagraves of Channel 4, who was on TOP. But one disc jockey in this area, and she is a lot more than just that title. She is a part of the musical scene of this city and this area. The wonderful Lisa Berigan has been a true and lasting staple of classic rock radio in this region for, 15 years now, and overall has been a presence in the radio world for 25 plus years as a radio personality in multiple cities and ensconced in multiple formats. And now she's also known across the country with her nationally syndicated podcast, Live in Concert, which I always remember. We just heard her driving back from the beach doing a live show, and I love the intros and the cadences and stuff. She continues to be a solid heralded presence on rock radio here in DC and the DMV, and that is that midday host gig 10 to 3 on Big 100. She's also a Gracie Award winner. We'll talk all about that wonderful award named after Gracie Allen. And I've been a big fan of this lady for many years. Even though we haven't spent a lot of time together, we are undoubtedly kin when it comes to our love for classic rock and roll and music in general. So, wow, is it an honor to have her on with me tonight. Let's please give a warm Living on Music welcome to a DC classic rock mainstay, Lisa Berigan. Lisa, thanks so much for being on Living on Music.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is. I'm telling you, your presence and obviously your voice has been part of my life since I got here. I think you started there about 10 years after I moved down from upstate New York, and always has been part of all of us who love classic rock, but love radio and music and things like that. So thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
You and I talked a
We're
little bit.
We're going to have fun.
We are, and undoubtedly. And we talked a little bit about venues that you love. And sometimes I cast one in the background, and this is Pier 6, right, in Baltimore?
It is Pier 6 Pavilion, now called something else, because you know how these corporate sponsorships work. It's like once you get used to calling Nissan Pavilion, then it's Jiffy Lube Live. And
right.
Then, so that is called something else now. And I'm forgetting what Pier 6 Pavilion has become. But I love that venue. That is definitely one of my favorite venues.
It's the MICU Pavilion, right? MECU. I don't know if they call it.
I think it is MICU. I think it is MICU. Yep. I think you're right.
What was the best show one of your favorite shows that you ever saw there? I know you've seen a ton, but does something jump out at you?
Heart was really good there. I saw the Moody Blues there.
Wow.
It's even so much more than the music. It's just a really good vibe. Just the scene, everything about it. So, I would go there even if it's not necessarily a band that I like, just because I think it's a really great venue.
Yeah. The kind of a Wolf Trap vibe. It's like you don't have to love the band, but you go, and I know you love Wolf Trap as well. And well, hopefully, I just looked it up, and they have some shows booked. Joe Russo's Almost Dead band is playing. I had a few that have been postponed again and rescheduled. Blackberry Smoke, and the Allman Betts band and stuff like that. But hopefully they're back. And
there is more coming too. In the coming weeks, some more stuff's going to be announced, and listen to Big 100. I'll give you the latest scoop on that. But yes, there's definitely more concerts coming, not only at that venue, but a lot of different venues this summer. So there's a lot to look forward to this year. I think people are just dying to get back to see some concerts. So
I know.
It's going to be a good summer.
It is incredible. This weekend, we went out to dinner in Reston. Then we went to a Nationals game. And then we had friends over, just another couple, my cousin. And all of a sudden we're like, wow, we haven't done this in literally a year. And in one weekend, we're like, whoa, but it felt relatively safe. And live music, as you well know, and we'll talk a little bit about how it's the impact that this has had. And I've seen it firsthand with these amazing people I've interviewed for the last year on Living on Music. And they've been hurting. I'm sure you felt it in your position, kind of being able to look out over the 30,000 feet of music and rock and roll and stuff as it stands now. How have you seen this affect musicians and music from your perspective?
It's been devastating for the musicians, and it's not just the musicians, it's all the industry supported by the musicians, the roadies, the promoters, all the restaurants and bars that are around music venues. So it's so much more than just the musicians. It's all the industries around the music industry and all the support staff. I mean, you have a rock star, but there's so many other people around them keeping that rock star going. And your big names, they've got hopefully a little bit of money in the bank so they can survive a pandemic. But some of these other people, it's been absolutely devastating for them and their families. And I just pray that they've been able to hold on and that this summer, they start to get a regular paycheck again and can get back on their feet. It's really been wonderful what some musicians have been doing with fundraising, trying to do that, the Joe Bonamasses of the world and that kind of thing. They have definitely done some great fundraising, but that can only go so far. Let's just hope.
Yes,
it's back. The music industry is back. And I know people are very willing to spend their money this summer. Like, we would have complained about sitting in traffic for 2 hours at Jiffy Lube Live and complained about an $11 beer. But let me tell you, I will gladly pay for an $11 beer and sit in traffic for 2 hours just to be able to go out and see a live show. So bring it on.
Yeah, exactly. We just got our Dead and Company tickets for August 18th. And I'm like, just let me go out there and stand and see Bobby and, those guys and just, and Phil and play. But, well, that's really, astute of you because you're in the middle of it all. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we're going along. For you, doing radio virtually probably was, at least from a technical standpoint, or at least being able to do it on a daily basis, that's one of the things you could probably continue fairly easily once you had your setup, right?
Yeah, I think the good thing about the home studio, doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the Big 100 on-air studio. Yeah. But as far as the listeners and what they're hearing out of their speakers, most of them can't tell the difference. Right. So it may take some more work on my end because I'm not working with as sophisticated of equipment at home. But the most important thing is what's coming out of those speakers. And for the past year or so, it's really still sounded great. Yeah,
it did. And I again, we were driving back from Bethany, I think, and you were on. And I was like, I'll be talking to her soon. I'm really curious on how, again, from your perspective, there is a little clip of a video that I believe you put out there right as this began, kind of just showing the general scope of how you are continuing to do Lisa Berigan, middays on Big 100. Let's show everybody, if you haven't seen this, you guys, it's a really neat way to kind of get a sense of what Lisa has been doing in her home studio.
Hi, it's Lisa Berigan live from the home studio. Done 2 shows so far in this home studio, which really, it's a closet, not even a walk-in closet, just really a 4x4 closet. It is well soundproofed because I have been using this as a sound booth for many years because I host the show live in concert, and that's where I voice it from here. But as far as like all this engineering equipment and be able to run the radio station from here, all this stuff is new. So this is my little miniature board. And this is where I can get into the station with the music and all of that stuff. I've got my internet computer, I've got my mic, and starting on Monday, I'm very excited. Our brilliant engineers, Dan and Matt, have figured out a way for the Big 100 request lines to be forwarded here. So I'm actually going to be able to start taking your phone calls again because I've missed talking to you on the phone. So that will start on Monday. So, the show must go on. I don't see daylight in here, but that's okay. That's okay. Still doing the show on Big 100, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. So please give a listen to the Lisa Berigan radio show. I'll talk to you soon.
The host of my show, I'm the engineer, I'm my own IT person, I'm my own, I've got to troubleshoot everything. If something goes wrong, I've got to figure it out. Thankfully, my significant other is pretty tech savvy, so I can be like, Dave, come help me. But if he's not home, I'm kind of on my own. And that can be problematic because I am not the most tech savvy person in the world. I mean, I know my way around a board. I know my way around a radio studio.
Right.
But some of the latest technology in IT is not my forte.
Right. And that has been very common with your colleagues in the music business in this area over the last year that I've talked to. It just varies. Some people have been doing this for a while before this hit. Some people are jumping in fresh. It's really been a very interesting time. And I think this will continue, this virtual presentation of things. It's just people are itching to get out and hear live music out there too. So that, it'll be
Yep.
interesting. You did something right before we delve back into your life a little bit and kind of your ride and radio and things like that. You did a really neat interview right before this all hit. I believe it was around March of 2020 with Rick Allen, who is the drummer for Def Leppard, as anybody who's a music fan knows. An incredible life he's had with Def Leppard. Obviously, not dwelling on it, but losing his arm in a car accident and things like that. This was a wonderful interview, and I have two, minute or two clips that you did. I wanted to show you asking questions. You talk a little bit about the music and the art with him. Like, what motivates you with music that might motivate you differently with art, and then also working with veterans. And I know he mentioned, right, that he has PTSD from what he went through, and it was a neat thing with Rick. A little background on that.
Great. He's a phenomenal guy. He's a regular guest in the Big 100 studio. I mean, whenever Def Leppard's in town or whenever his art shows are in town, he loves to stop by. He's always been very generous with his time, not only with radio people, but like you said, with veterans. I mean, he's a guy that's going down there and visiting with veterans, and that's not something you always read about in the newspaper or hear about. He's just doing it on his own time because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And he does believe that he can relate to these veterans because of his horrific accident. Yes, he lost his arm in a much different way than somebody who's been in a combat zone has lost a limb, but losing a limb is losing a limb.
Yes.
And, even if you've lost it in a different way, his was a car accident, you still have the same trauma, and that stays with you. And I think Rick has dealt with his accident very, very well over the decades. Yes. And he's come to terms with it and tried to get meaning from such a horrific thing. And I think he's found it.
I agree. And I mean, when that happened and it was like, it's a drummer who lost his arm. I mean, no. And I remember watching him since, and what a powerful guy and what a wonderful chat you had. This is you guys a little bit of Lisa right before this hit, but something you do all the time and do it so well is talking to these people. And that's part of the charm and the nature of what you've been doing for the last 25 plus years. This is Lisa with a little bit of Def Leppard's Rick Allen.
To RSVP. I'm wondering, Rick, what kind of rewards do you get out of doing art as opposed to when you're on stage with Def Leppard and you're doing music either on stage or in the studio?
Well, music and art, and I think any kind of artistic endeavors, I think for me specifically, are very healing. I suffer from PTSD myself, which is one of the reasons why, a portion of the money from the artwork goes to Project Resiliency or Warriors programs. So for me it's just very healing. The more time I spend in the moment, I find the better it is for my nervous system.
What do you say when you meet veterans? I know you do so much work with veterans with your foundation. Obviously the trauma's the same. You lost a limb with a car accident, they in battle, but do they relate to you? For
sure. Yeah, we speak the same language. We've been through the same aspects in terms of self-medication, isolation, sometimes rage. So they're part of the population that I can really kind of relate to. So really it's the least I can do, giving to their cause. And they feel as though they can trust me. They feel like they know me because, I've been around for so long.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they would listen to our music while they were being deployed,
Yeah, he's something else, I think. And they were just inducted into the hall, right? Not
A couple years ago,
couple years
they were
ago.
finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's really great to see some of those bands that have been overlooked for so many years
Yes.
finally getting inducted. And yeah, go
Still-
Def Leppard. If you're on my Facebook page, you notice how much I love them, because the Lisa Berigan on the Radio Facebook page, it's a picture of me with Def Leppard, because I love that band. I love all those 80s bands. Love them.
I bet you do, and we've got some wonderful little moments to show of as you progress through your radio career and kind of different people in different places. There are really some wonderful things to show. You were born Albany, New York.
I was born in Albany, New York. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
a upstate New York girl. That's where I grew up. Grew up in a suburb there.
Hudson,
went to
Hudson
school
Valley's a
there,
beautiful
and,
place.
Yeah.
Yep. We lived
Yeah,
in
so-
Coxsackie. You know, that little
Oh,
weird,
okay. Yeah.
weird little thing. Then we moved over to other places, but I know it well. Worked in TV there, as we talked about pre-show. But you grew up in the suburb. Yep.
East Greenbush, New York, which
East
is right
Greenbush.
over the Hudson River
Yes.
in Rensselaer County, New York.
Right.
And yeah, that's where I grew up.
And a brother and a sister, or more.
Brother and a sister.
That's
One
right.
of each.
And what was the music environment in your house? Did you find it on your own? Were your parents involved in music at all? How did the music begin its
Well,
Lisa Berigan world in your head?
my father is a huge Elvis fan.
Ooh,
Is to this day.
thank
So
you.
I definitely love Elvis because of my father. He would always
Nice.
play Elvis. My mom was always more of a Sinatra kind of thing.
Ooh.
That never really rubbed off so much. It's funny though, because my mom and I took a road trip recently down to Asheville just a couple months ago. And of course, what she wanted to listen to in the car, she wanted to listen to Frank Sinatra and Bobby Darin.
Oh my
Of the
God.
two, I think I definitely prefer Bobby Darin. He's a little bit more
Right.
upbeat and danceable. But yeah, I think got my love of Elvis from my dad. As far as what I was listening to growing up, I remember listening to Casey Kasem Top 40 Countdown. So I just love listening to Top 40 radio.
Right.
And my friend Giselle and I, we would just lay out in the sun on Sunday morning and we would listen to the top 40, and then we'd like quiz each other, like, what was number 2? And it was Elton John,
God.
Over Breaking My Heart. Or,
It was
you know, we
already
just loved-
starting that music. You were going beyond just listening to it and looking at how people were coming into the business. Boy, you started young on that kind of music ride. That is
Well, we just loved listening to
Love
the
that.
top 40 countdown, and it was just something fun that we did. Yeah.
Casey Kasem, obviously a legend of all of our times, and
Yep.
Top 40 Countdown. Just
Yep.
an amazing guy. I live with a longtime clarinet player. Suzanne plays in the Main Street Community Band in Fairfax, and also
okay.
the City of Fairfax Band. So the clarinet is near and dear. When did you start playing an actual instrument? When did the clarinet come into your life, and how long did it stay?
I started playing clarinet in 5th grade.
Oh,
I did it all the way through college.
wow.
Yeah. So I would say in high school, I was a pretty serious clarinetist. And then in college, I played in the pep band. It was a lot of fun. I actually wish I had stuck with the guitar lessons, because there was about a year where I was playing both clarinet and guitar, and I had so many other extracurriculars going on. I'm like, I have got to give up one. So I gave up the guitar. I wish I had given up the clarinet, because it's not like I can go jam on my clarinet down at the corner pub. But if I had stuck with guitar, I could still be playing that today.
Right.
But my clarinet, it's out in the garage. I haven't played it in decades.
Right. Oh,
So
wow.
there's just no real way or reason for me to pull that out. But if I had stuck with the guitar, there's always use for a guitar player somewhere.
Well, if Dave sang, then you might. I've been a singer for 15 years, and obviously when the pandemic hit, my bands stopped, and we lost about 10 gigs over the last year. It's been devastating on my little level. And Suzanne, who I just mentioned, picked up the guitar after not playing forever. Really, she'd had a guitar at 14, kind of like you did, around young age, and we became the Greek and the Freak, and we've played 10, 12 live gigs. So I'm telling you, as you know, anything can happen. And
I love it.
It saved me because I actually could keep singing and we were singing stuff, everything from all over the place. And we just did some more Eddie Vedder the other day, which I know you love, Pearl, and just some stuff we're just picking out from life, but it was wonderful. When you went to college at Fordham, and I'm from Connecticut and know New York really well, know Fordham well. Wow. Great university. Communications was your concentration. As I mentioned in the intro, I love DJing, but never knew if I was going to make a career at it. And I became a music director and DJ at BU station. Did that begin to come into your life in college, or was that even a little later?
No, I never really thought that I would be a DJ or be doing music. I worked at the college radio station, but I was doing more news sports. Right. I thought that I would be a sports journalist or a sports reporter. And I did do that. I worked at WFUV in the sports department. Wow. I was working, writing sports stories for the college newspaper. One semester, I was the editor of the sports section of the paper. So when I got out of college, I was looking more, I knew I wanted to be in the media, but never really thought that I'd be in the music end of it at all. I first started out in sports.
Right. And you continued to stay with communication. You worked again as you got out of college and you became an actual sports reporter for...
I was I actually started doing it when I was still in college. Right. There's a series of newspapers in Westchester County and Rockland County called Gannett, Westchester Rockland newspapers. Yeah. And I worked in New Rochelle at the Standard Star, which is, I was still in college. So I would take the train up from Fordham in the Bronx to New Rochelle, and I'd work at the Standard Star. Sports editor at the time, I think, was Jim O'Toole. Wow. And I was doing sports stories while I was still in college. Oh. So I worked for a number of newspapers. I worked for the Schenectady Daily Gazette in upstate New York. Yeah. I bounced around part-time to some radio stations in Albany, including Fly 92 and GYFM. Okay. And I worked at a couple of tiny stations in Saratoga Springs, New York, which were actually my first paying radio jobs. One was WKAJ AM. Wow. And the sister station was WQQY FM.
Oh, well, you had the Saratoga Performing Arts Center nearby, which is one of my favorite venues of all time.
I love it.
Yeah, you walk through that bridge into the woods. I remember seeing Peter Gabriel when he was still, it was unbelievable shows there and stuff. So you worked at these radio stations at this period, but weren't spinning records and talking about music yet.
I did. The Saratoga Springs station was my first music radio job. I was working on the AM. I was just doing board opping. I was board opping Mets games for minimum wage. And the only time I got to crack the mic was if a Mets player hit a home run. And when they did, a listener got a Domino's pizza. So if there was like 5 home runs in a game, I got to crack the mic 5 times and say, Jill Smith, you've won a Domino home run pizza. Right. I think they let me do the weather. So that was like my professional radio debut. And then it just got to the point where the FM was right in the next studio. And I could see the DJ through the window. And it seemed like the overnight guy was always either not showing up late. So the poor night guy who was doing 7 to midnight, he was always having to pull a double or having to wait around. And so he came into me one day and he's like, you know what? We need to get you a tape together. So when this happens, we can put you on the air. Oh, and it's like, really? Yes. He's like, yeah. So he helped me cut this tape, gave it to the FM program director. And he's like, yeah, next time, we have a part-time slot or somebody doesn't show up, we'll put you in. And then next thing you know, a couple weeks later, I've got my own part-time slot. And then a few months after that, I've got regular shifts. And then, so that's how that came, really accidentally, because of a slacker who never showed up. So they're like, well, Lisa's reliable. We can teach her how to do this. So that's how it happened.
But you did have an inert love of music, as told about you and your girlfriend and your chart things, but also growing through time to become a music fan. I mean, we talked a little about your favorite bands. A number of them are mine as well. The Beatles, Bon Jovi, Elton John.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go a little more modern day with Pearl Jam and Guns N' Roses. But how did it go from the Saratoga gig? It seems like your first big gig was in 1994, I think, and it was at Y100. Was that the first big step where you said, "Oh, this is going to go this way now"?
Yeah. I mean, that was my first, major market gig.
What was
you
the
know
shift?
How it is in TV and radio. It's all about like what market size are you
right.
in?
What was the shift? What was your first shift at a Y100?
It was middays. I was doing 10 to 3 on Philadelphia's Y100, which was an alternative radio station.
Radio Philadelphia is WPLY 100.3 FM Y100.
It was a legendary station, and I was just thrilled to be a part of it.
Right.
I followed the Barsky Morning Show, which was just a great local Philadelphia morning show. And I just have so many fond memories of my years in Philadelphia.
Oh, I bet you do. There was, I know there was some pictures we had, and they were in the early 90s. I don't know whether it was at Y100 or not, of you and Aerosmith, Van Halen. What were those experiences? And was that with Y, or was that another?
It was not. That was, I actually worked in Burlington, Vermont. At a radio station called 95 XXX.
Yeah, I know it.
And that is where Van Halen, and that is where I met Aerosmith. So I was Burlington, being that it was a smaller market. You know how it is. You don't just do middays. You do middays. You're the promotions director. You're the public affairs director. So I was doing promotions and marketing for 95 XXX, as well as doing an air shift and all these other hats that I wore as well. So, so I did quite a bit of concerts and that kind of thing, where I wasn't only interviewing people or doing a show. I was involved with how is our radio station going to be involved with the Aerosmith concert?
Right.
So, yeah.
That was my biggest connection to Burlington is obviously University of Vermont. I've had so many friends, and Grace Potter and I are semi-buddies. So I know her from up near there. Burlington is a pretty amazing town, even for being up in kind of the middle of Vermont. Did you go from there to Philly?
I did, which was quite a big jump. People are like, wow, who's this girl from Burlington, Vermont? All of a sudden she's on the air in Philadelphia. That came about. I was obsessed with New York City radio and had always been obsessed with New York City radio ever since going to Fordham. I loved listening to Z100. I loved listening to PLJ. I just couldn't get enough of it. Hot 97. I just love listening to those radio stations. Right. And I would constantly send tapes of myself to Scott Shannon at WPLJ.
Wow.
And and PLJ had an opening. And I was just like relentless. I was calling every day. I was sending tapes. I was just like the biggest pain in the butt. They were probably like, who is this girl in Burlington that will not stop calling me? But it was, it was the Scott and Todd show for years at PLJ. And Todd Pettengill, wouldn't you know, I worked for him at Fly 92 briefly in Albany, New York, because radio is such a small world. You know how it is. It's like 7 degrees. It's like the Kevin Bacon game. Everybody's related to somebody in radio somehow.
Right.
So, after like just inundating him with calls and tapes and everything over months, I did not get the PLJ job, but I was a finalist, which I thought was pretty cool as a baby DJ in Burlington, Vermont, to be one of the finalists for a full-time gig at PLJ in New York City.
PLJ was a giant then, with WW and the stations you said. I loved PLJ myself. Being well,
this was actually when PLJ had turned top 40. So you may have been one of the bitter classic rock people who were like, no,
that was when it did. You're right.
Well, PLJ had gone top 40 at this point, but But Scott remembered me and remembered that, he thought that I had something, and he was consulting Y100 in Philadelphia. So I get this call from this guy in Philadelphia, the program director, Garrett Michaels, and he's like, Scott Shannon at PLJ in New York said he really likes your work and he wants me to talk to you. I was like, oh my God, Scott Shannon, like even really, he knows me, he's recommending me. So I didn't get the gig in New York City, but I did get the gig in Philadelphia. So it all worked out.
Yeah, what a wonderful jump from, and again, Burlington sounded like a way to cut your teeth and kind of cover a whole circle of stuff from that life. But then you jumped right into Y100. It seemed like from some of the visual memories that it was a great run. Then 1996, look where you came.
I did. I came.
Z104, Washington, D.C.
One of the original DJs on Z104 in DC. And Washington, DC had not had a top 40 station in about 5 or 6 years. So DC was hungry for top 40 radio. And Alan Hotland, wonderful man, contacted me at Y100 in Philadelphia and made me an offer I couldn't refuse and came down here to DC.
Oh, wow. And their format was Z104 was...
Top 40.
Top 40. That's what you said.
Top 40.
Yeah. So that's when there was a lot of late 90s meetups with people like In Sync.
Oh, gosh.
Jessica Simpson.
Spice Girls. This may not sound that impressive now because, the Spice Girls, they were hot for a few years and aren't now.
They were big.
I interviewed the Spice Girls right after Ginger Spice left. That was huge. I don't know if you remember that. When Ginger Spice quit the Spice Girls, that was like international headline front page news. I interviewed the Spice Girls backstage at what was then Nissan Pavilion right after that happened. That was quite a get.
Oh, a big time get. I mean, they were center news in the music life. And, I love that story. I remember I in TV, I was a production assistant for the concert of the century at the White House in 1999 and got to meet every conceivable rock star. I still can't even believe it happened. And meeting Clapton and Fogerty and I could Garth Brooks, BB King, Al Green. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. But we ended up the end of the night, the whole crew, and In Sync in the Lincoln bedroom of the hotel, that big, huge main hotel right on.
You and In Sync?
Yeah. I walked in and I'm looking in this doorway and I'm going, there's nobody. We came up earlier to deliver booze and there's nobody. This door was open and all of a sudden Joey Fatone comes over and he's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And he invites me in and it was such an amazing experience, but that's for another show. But so you were in DC. I mean, DC radio was cranking along. That must've been a great gig for you as well as things were ascending.
Yeah. 96 to 2000, I had a great run at Z104 and I'd always wanted to do morning. So I was the midday host at Z104, but I'd always thought, I'd like the challenge of doing my own morning show.
Yeah.
So the guy that I worked for at Y100 in Philadelphia, he was launching a station in Seattle. Oh. And he called me and he said, I really want to put together a morning show with people that I, really think are going to be great. And I want to put you with this guy, Josh Goodman, who I've known since he was 14 years old. He's an upstate New Yorker as well. Right. So I just knew him since forever. And we had worked together at Y100 also. He was doing nights when I was doing middays. And he said, I think that you guys really could have a special chemistry and I want you guys to host mornings out here in Seattle. So I ended up going out to Seattle for a couple of years. Yeah.
Oh, and what a musical focus there is out there. Obviously the home of grunge and Jimmy and things like that. And going back a little bit, I did notice in some of the research you did something at the Reading Festival in England. What was that?
That was a blast. That was the major sponsors of Reading Festival that year, I think, was 7-Eleven. And 7-Eleven just happened to be a huge client of Z104, and they wanted us to take listeners over to Reading Festival. And, they needed one of the DJs to go. And I'm like,
I'll go.
That was the year. Okay. I'm kicking myself so much when I think back to Reading, though, because that was the year that Page and Plant played. Oh. But there's multiple stages.
Yeah.
I chose not to go see Page Plant. I think I chose to see Garbage.
Oh my.
And yeah. And I love Garbage. I mean, that's a great band, but how could I have given up the opportunity to see Paige Plant, but
Oh.
I know I'm still kicking myself to this day. Like, what was I thinking? But yeah, so I got to take some Z104 listeners over to the Reading Festival, and I got to experience the festival as well. So it was great. And, let the station know back here in DC what was going on. I did that also for Woodstock 99.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my friend Cheryl and I, we went up to Woodstock 99. I was just kind of, letting the station know what was going on there with little updates and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. I think I used to live pretty close to where Woodstock was held in the 90s, and we had Houk stock at my house. We didn't go, but we had about 30 people over, and it was a massive party, and we watched it on the live stream feed thing they had back in that year. And I remember 99, there was a lot going on there, though, wasn't it? Like,
it was, there were problems.
Did you feel that, or luckily you were, because it got very dangerous, especially for women at times.
Yeah,
and I'm like, what's going on there?
We left the last day, like in the morning. So I was not there for the last day when they were tearing down all the, equipment and everything.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for that, but it was just very unpleasant. Like, you couldn't get near any of the stages because people had left all the water running. So the fields were just like a big pond.
Oh my
So
God.
you would be standing in water up to your knees. It just wasn't pleasant. And it was so hot.
Yes.
It was like in the 90s and humid, and you're in a tent, and I'm not a camper at all.
Right.
So just the fact of being in a tent was not pleasant at all to me. And I was just like, you know what, this isn't fun. Let's just go.
No, and as I mentioned to you about my stint at WTZA for a number of years, a lot of my colleagues after I left went there and covered it, and said it was pretty intense. But the one in '94 was great. Aerosmith finished one night, and we were sitting in the living room and dancing, and I loved it. When you were in Seattle, Lisa, you had a couple. It must have been again a wonderful experience. The music scene out there was pretty amazing. I'm trying to think. Some of the guys, was that. I would think in 2000 to 2002, that would be Pearl Jam was in force.
Well, by the time I got to Seattle, it was very weird because it was almost post-grunge.
Yeah.
Like the grunge was kind of over at this point. And Seattle was kind of past its prime by the time I got there.
Right.
Not only musically, but the .com crash had just happened.
Oh.
So Seattle, like a couple years before, high flying, everybody's got money. I get there, grunge is over. The music I love really isn't happening anymore. And guess what? Seattle and the Pacific Northwest are going into like a severe recession because of the .com crash.
Wow.
So it was a weird time to be there.
Right.
I mean, I loved my job. I loved hosting mornings. I loved my co-host, Josh Goodman, and the people who were around me, and all of that. But it was a weird time to be in Seattle. And Seattle's not the friendliest place in the world if you're not from there.
Interesting.
It's a difficult place to make friends. I found that most of my friends were also transplants.
Oh.
I won't say everybody, but it's definitely you're not from here kind of vibe.
Interesting. Yeah, that is. And 2002, while you were there, and I don't know whether you were still at the point at that moment, there's a picture of you with the Olympic torch.
Oh yeah,
What is that? That is amazing.
Oh man, that was a pretty major get as well. Like, I've always been a huge fan of the Olympics.
Yeah,
Olympics,
me too.
ever since watching Nadia Comaneci, you know, when I was a little girl. I've always been a big fan of the Olympics. And I think that was through Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola being a major sponsor of the Olympics, and they get to handpick who they wanted, and they picked one radio person in all of Seattle radio to carry the torch, and they picked me. And I was like, I was so thrilled with that. And I think it was just because they knew my love of the Olympics. Because it certainly wasn't, I had only been in town 2 years. I didn't get to Seattle till 2000. This is Salt Lake City Olympics 2002. There were DJs that had been hosting morning shows for 30 years in that town. But Coca-Cola chose me just because they could sense my passion for the Olympics.
Man.
And they knew how much I was talking about the Olympics and the Olympic torch and all of that on the air. So I think that's why I got chosen. But honestly, if I was those other morning show hosts and stuff, I probably would have been like, hey,
Right.
I've been in this town for 30 years and you're picking her to carry the torch. Come on.
Come
But
on.
hey, I took it and we made a big deal about it. If you look at that picture in the background, you see the 96.5 The Point van, and there's a guy on top playing an electric guitar. One of my co-hosts on the morning show was doing the national anthem, Jimi Hendrix style, on top of the van as I was running with the Olympic torch. So that was quite a moment for myself and for the radio station.
Oh, I bet.
So, yeah.
What a special moment. I totally love that. There was a break in time when you left the Point and before you got to Chicago. How did that, what went on in that time right before? And then when you started at the Mix, another amazing music city, Chicago.
Yeah. Well, you know how it is in radio. Sometimes format changes happen. And the whole staff was called into a conference room one day and it's like, we're making some changes to the radio station and no one in this room is involved in those changes. So, so it's like, bye-bye. So that was fall of 2002.
Right. Okay.
They blew up the station. Everybody at the station was let go. I put my stuff in storage and packed what I could in my car and drove back east because I'm an East Coast girl.
Right.
My friend Lucy, who I've known, one of my best friends, Lucy St. James from Y100 in Philadelphia, she's like, just come here, live with me. You'll figure out what you want to do. So I took a couple weeks driving across the country by myself and stopping in different cities, dropping off my tape. I stopped off, everywhere from Salt Lake City to Minneapolis to Chicago. So when I was in Chicago, dropping off tapes at different stations, ended up in Philadelphia doing some part-time there. Because this was like October, November, December. And as you know, in media, when it's the holidays, everybody can get a part-time job at the holidays because everybody wants time off.
Right.
So it's very easy to get part-time shifts during the holidays.
Sure.
So I was working at the Mix in Philadelphia part-time. I was also working at New Jersey 101.5, which is a talk station in New Jersey, doing some fill-ins there for a couple months.
Right.
And then January 2003, one of those tapes I had dropped off a couple months before driving across the country. Barry James gave me a call from the Mix in Chicago and said, hey, I love your tape and we're going to be needing somebody here. Do you want to come work in Chicago at the Mix? And I was like, absolutely. I'm there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, wonderful. And while you were there, I mean, it seemed like your presence and your reputation went up. There was a whole feature in a magazine during that period, right? And some other really nice press for you.
I did get some good press there. That magazine article, that was pretty funny. That was, how they do the top singles in the city. And so it was one of those stories, the top 30 singles or something in Chicago. I was not with my significant other. I had not met him at that point, although I did meet him in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
So that was one of those things. And I did have a pretty big feature in one of the daily newspapers there. So I really enjoyed my time in Chicago. A lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. I've never been there until 2 years ago, and my partner had a conference, so I spent the days alone. But I went to Wrigley and cried because I'm a baseball fan. So even just going to Wrigley
I'm a big
Field.
baseball fan as well. I love baseball.
What's your favorite team?
Do you really want to know?
Well, I mean, you can tell me. You might not make the other local fans.
First, I do want to say the Nationals are my favorite National League team. I do love the Nationals, and I am a huge baseball fan. Right. But I grew up a Yankee fan, and I will be a Yankee fan till the day I die. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry.
And I'm a Mets fan. So, we can.
You know how that is.
Well,
that is. But I mean, I moved city to city. I'm not going to change my baseball affiliation just because I moved to a new city. I can love, the Seattle Mariners, but when the Mariners are playing the Yankees, I'm rooting for the Yankees.
Right.
When they, and so I love the Nationals, and I will always root for the Nationals, except when they're playing the Yankees, because the Yankees are they've been my team my whole life.
You are wonderful to say that kind of thing. I couldn't change my team either. And then to be a rival with the Nationals and live with the Nationals fan, I've had to be. We just went the other day and I wore a Jacob deGrom jersey, a Mets jersey, and I got grief for the first time I've ever at Nats Park ever. One guy was like, "The Mets," and they're like yelling at me, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, why are we doing this now?" But I love that because your sports, I know your sports life is something special to you as well. Stayed at the Mix for 3 years, then
I came back to DC.
It was a move. It's a move that has been, that has kept you here for 15 years. You've become a presence in this place. Why do you think this move seemed to be the most lasting one?
Well, I have a significant other now, and it's a lot harder to move around when you have somebody else that you're concerned with as well. Before Chicago, I was like footloose and fancy free. You got a better gig for me? Hey, pack up my car. I'm there. I'll see you in a week. When can I start?
Right.
And now it's not just me. It's like, well, he's got a job. I have to worry about his job. Is his transfer going to be right for him? That's a big part of it. Plus, you get to an age where you're just tired of moving around so much. While it's been a lot of fun living in a lot of different cities, the older you get, the harder it is to pick up and move. And sometimes it's harder to make friends. And then it's just the whole point of every time you move, you got to find a new dentist. You've got to find a new doctor. You've got to open a new bank account. It's just like one thing after another. So I just think, I've really found my place here, and it's really been great to be able to put some roots down here in DC, especially since I was here in the 90s. So it really made sense, one, to come back to the East Coast, since I'm an East Coast girl. Most of my family is, between New York and DC. Got family in New York City, got family in Philadelphia. So it just made sense to come back to the East Coast, and I'd already loved DC, and I'd already established myself in radio in DC in the 90s. So everything worked out.
Yeah, it did. And it not only has worked out, Lisa, it's, you can tell by, even in the research I've recently done, and you can even go to your social media and look at it. You've created a beloved reputation because, and that has to be wonderful. I mean, you are, you are remaining to, and this is another thing that I wanted to chat with you about. Terrestrial radio in 2021. The options are so vast. It's like television, to be honest with you. And when I was working at the local stations, we were becoming this kind of local entity, which made sense with weather and sports or weather and traffic. But there were so many other options, and people have so much to do, and they want to watch this here. And how have you felt that terrestrial radio, Big 100, and the rest of your competitors and colleagues in the business are feeling in 2021 with what you're doing with a station like Big 100 in the midst of all of this other options?
Well, I think you always have to evolve. And so I don't only do the radio show. I do podcasting. Yes. I'm on social media. I do interviews. I'm out in the community hosting events when we could do events. Hopefully I'll be out doing those again. Yeah. So I think even though there may be other things that people have discovered, other platforms, they're still going to come back to their local radio station. I feel like I have a personal connection with my listeners. My show is interactive. I'm still somebody who you can call up on the phone and request a song.
Right.
We're connected on social media. I'm out there next to you, jumping up and down, screaming my head off at the concert at Jiffy Lube Live.
Right.
I like to think that I'm their friend, and, I'm grateful for my listeners staying with me. And I think I'm also lucky being in the classic rock format is that most of my listeners, they grew up with local radio. They love local radio. Whereas a teenager today, maybe the radio isn't as important to them as it was. I mean, we were talking earlier how important the radio was, just listening with my friends to Casey Kasem and quizzing each other on, I mean, radio has just always been so important to people my age. We just grew up with it, and I think it's always going to be a part of my life, and a part of people my age. It's going to be an important part of our life. I would hope to think that some of the stations that maybe the listeners are younger, that they will continue to listen to terrestrial radio, but everybody's got to evolve. And I think that's what we're seeing in radio right now is an evolution.
I think you're right, 100%. And also, let's be honest. You and me feel this way. Classic rock's the best music that's been come out of anywhere for the last 50 years. And I know that everybody has their tastes, so we could all have our own fun little debates about it. But I mean, you know, I saw Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden when I was 15 years old, Aerosmith the year before at Madison Square Garden, Skinner in 77. It all just, it's never going to change. It's all the music of my heart and soul. Sure. Pearl Jam, phenomenal. Gun, you know, there's some great bands of the last U2, the last, 20, 30 years. But you've just created a presence though. And maybe again, it is pretty stunning to say that, if you're going to think about classic rock in Washington, it's Lisa Berigan. I mean, that's the way it is. So it must be kind of cool. I know you're humble.
That's so flattering to me. Like I would never think that. But thank you very much. I mean, I've been on the air on Big 100 for 15 years now, so that's definitely nice to hear. But wow, that's unbelievably flattering of you to say that, Steve.
I am honestly not kidding, and I've thought that. And what I do love too, and I said about it in your open, is live in concert, and it is kind of the Lisa live. It should be Lisa live in concert because it's the way you go through that intro, and Cheap Trick. I mean, it's just this whole vibe you have. How did you begin the live and I mean, obviously concerts to you and me and people that love rock and roll and like us, there's nothing like live shows. So how did this evolve? And you won a Gracie in 2009 for Best Specialty Program, which had to be a huge thing given the organization, the alliance that runs that, and Gracie herself. But how did Live in Concert come to be? I know, did it spun off big and then you took it nationally, or how did it come?
Actually, my significant other, Dave, really has to have the credit. He's the executive producer of Live in Concert, and really it was his concept. We were watching Live 8 together back in 2005. And I don't know if you remember Live 8. It was 8 concerts all over the globe. They were in Australia, they were in London, they were here in America. And if you were watching or listening to the coverage, it was like, okay, now we're going to go to London and we're going to hear Robert Plant. And they would play like 20 minutes of Robert Plant. And then they'd be like, now we're going to New York City and we're going to hear Cheap Trick. And then now we're going to Australia and we're going to hear, In Excess. And it was just, we thought this is the coolest thing ever. So Dave's like, let's do this on the radio. Take the greatest performances ever and make like a concert festival every weekend. People will love it. And I was like, okay. So we started doing it out of our house. He was doing affiliate relations. Because I work on Big 100 and program director at the time, Dan Michaels loved the concept. So he's like, well, yeah, Big 100 will run your syndicated show. Absolutely. Well, wasn't really syndicated yet, except out of our house. Dave was able to get a handful of affiliates on his own, just like picking up the phone, calling radio stations like, hey, will you run this show? And then eventually we were able to get up to about 25 affiliates. And at that point, you can start calling the Westwood Ones, the Premier Networks, the United stations, radio networks, which is who we're with, and be like, hey, we've got this show and we've got 25 affiliates and we think you guys could probably get us a lot more. And, let's team up and let's do something. So a few years later, we signed with the United Stations Radio Networks. The Live in Concert's now heard on about 130 radio stations. Ooh. So that Dave really is tremendous, and he really deserves a lot of the credit for the success of Live in Concert. I just host the show. I'm the host of the show, but he's the genius behind Live in Concert.
Oh, spectacular. Well, that's wonderful. A collaborative effort between you two is always a nice thing if it can happen too.
Absolutely.
I love that. You had some wonderful meetups in the last 15 years there. I mean, Adam Lambert, I love that. And that was probably from the Queen when he came and played with Queen. I saw that show. I took my daughter, who was then 16 or 17, and he was mind blowing. I mean, he almost apologized for not being Freddie, and he was so unbelievably humble. And then he blew our.
Was that at Merriweather?
Yeah, no, there was the then MCI Center, I think, at the time. before it's the Capitol Arena. But you got to meet Adam. I mean, part of your life, and I feel it as a music writer. I've had, just an incredible run and meeting and interviewing people. But in your world, being able to go and kind of hook up and say hello and shake hands. What were some of the people that really moved you in some of the last 15 years that you've hooked up with and been able to meet?
Well, being a huge Beatles fan, the fact that I got to interview Ringo Starr was huge for me. Yeah. Just huge. I mean, that was not in person. Right. That was him in his studio, me in my studio, but still, I don't even care. It was like me talking to Ringo Starr. So that was fabulous.
Hi, Ringo.
Yeah, hi, Lisa. Good morning.
How are you? Was it a late night for you? I hear you were out at the Who seeing your son Zach perform last night.
It was. I was out till, must have been 11.
How was the show?
The show was great. Now, the Who were great. As a band, I love them as a band, and Zach is a brilliant drummer. So we had a really good time. And we went to, we got there early because we wanted to see Liam. And he's just such a great voice and such expression. Anyway, we had a good time. I was with a couple of friends, Joe Walsh and Steve Lukather, and our ladies, and it was good.
Ann Wilson. Oh, she's wonderful.
She is.
She's wonderful to interview because she's so honest.
She is.
Some people, you interview them and you know that they're giving the same answer over and over again, like their publicist just told them, this is how we're going to answer this question. Right. And it's just like,
she's all over.
It like it is.
She is.
Like it is.
I interviewed her before her, about a week or two before her Birchmere show, and obviously a huge thrill. One of my first shows ever, New Haven Coliseum in Connecticut, was Hart. We drove from college, but I interviewed Ann, and you're right. She talked very openly about feeling that Hart was a machine, and she needed to be able to break away from it, and that's why we're sitting there at Birchmere, and she's doing the Who. And like these unbelievable songs. The thing, though, you can appreciate is that usually when you meet a celebrity at a place like the Birchmere, it'll be after the show, never before. Mm-hmm. They brought me in to meet her before, and it was like going in to meet the Queen in England, and it was the most odd thing. All the band is standing around, and it's just me, and I'm like, oh, what am I doing here? And Ann's all made up and ready to go with her mics all rigged, and I'm like, hi, and she's like, hey. So and Graham Nash, same thing happened before the show at the Birchmere. He did not have any patience. Speaking of the Beatles, I go, back. So many of the people on the show, in fact, very recently, people like John Kadlicek, who was in the Further band with Bob Weir and Phil Lesh and the Dark Star Orchestra, just had him on 2 weeks ago. What an amazing show. He doesn't do interviews like this. And we talked about, and who was the biggest influence in his life? The Beatles. I mean, wow. Darryl Klein, every guest I've had feels that thing. And I can tell, we're going to show a little clip of Tea Time, which I guess was, now there are a couple of things that happened in 2018. It was the 50th anniversary of the White Album, as you well know. And you went to International Beatle Week. Was that the first time you went, or had you gone over the years to Liverpool?
I started going to International Beatle Week in 2015, I think was my first one. And I've been every year since, with the exception of last year, because they didn't have it. I just absolutely love it. If you are a Beatles fan, you must go to International Beatle Week. It is phenomenal. It is just takes over the whole city, stages everywhere, bands from all over the world. It is just a party. You actually don't even have to be a Beatles fan to enjoy Beatle Week. It's just a party.
But if you are, it's like church. It's like
it's unbelievable. It's just so much fun.
And my buddies in the Goodfellas, who you know very well.
They've played International Beatle Week twice.
At the Cavern Club. I mean, can you imagine being in a Beatles cover band like those guys and playing? And I love when I sung at the Beatles Jam and Java thing.
Met.
Yes. And they let me sing Let It Be. And I was just like, oh, and what a moment that was for me to do that. And Eleanor Rigby, which Peter added very late. And I was like, I hope I can do that. But that was the first time I met you, and you were very sweet to give me a compliment on it, because it was such a big deal for me to sing those guys. In 2018, you did this thing in Liverpool. We've got a couple of clips that show your fun spirit as well, and your knowledge. One is a kind of a fun promo that you did in the pub with a beer, which I love. So you're going to see.
Actually, it's cider.
Oh, was it hard cider? Okay.
Hard cider.
There you go. Hard cider at the Liverpool pub, talking a little bit about their promotion for the 50th. And then we're going to go right into a couple of minutes of a clip that you had, Lisa, the Tea Time clip with Ray and John from the Goodfellas. And there's two other people in that clip. Who are those two other people, a lady and a gentleman?
Becky Abramson, who is the drummer for Dukes of Dartford, which is a Rolling Stones tribute band.
Wow.
And we also had, who else did we have on that? Oh, we had Neil Green, who is the fifth Goodfella. He sings, he's a phenomenal vocalist, and
That's
Neil
right.
sings sometimes with the Goodfellas.
Yes.
So yeah, I was
that's
trying
right.
to think who was in there. Tea Time with the Beatles Fans is a podcast that I do, but occasionally I'll do a video version of it on a big anniversary, like 50th of Sgt. Pepper, 50th Abbey Road, 50th of White Album. And those guys actually played a party that we put together. Big 100 did a big anniversary thing, and the Goodfellas played at it.
Right. They're very, very active. Again, to be able to be on stage with largely the Goodfellas and about four other Beatles bands in that Jam and Java thing, it was heaven on earth. And to be able to sing Beatles stuff in my duos, that music's just never goes away. It's always there.
Agreed.
And it's when you bring it out again. Here's a couple of clips from Lisa's Liverpool adventure and a little bit of Tea Time.
Hey, it's Lisa Berigan. I am at the Philharmonic Pub in Liverpool. This is the very pub where Paul McCartney did the carpool karaoke. In fact, this table is where the stage was set up. Now, it's a very small pub, although a very ornate and beautiful pub. And I'm just taking in all of Beatle Week 2018. A lot of celebrations this year of the White Album. And I want to let you know the 50th anniversary of the White Album is actually in November, and Big 100 has big things planned for that 50th anniversary. Mark this on your calendar, November 16th, White Album Friday. We're going to have a very exclusive party. Only 100 people will be getting tickets for this. The only way to get in is to win, so listen to Big 100, follow us on social media, and log on to WBIG.com. Cheers.
That's the white elephant we need to talk about the white elephant, Yoko. Because, people blame Yoko for breaking up the Beatles. I don't believe she broke up the Beatles. I think it was four guys just going in different directions. But certainly, there was tension in the studio when he started bringing her in.
Right. Well, and you got to remember, too, Apple, the corporation, had just started. So they had all of this going on. When did Magical Mystery Tour come out?
67. That came out late 67. Right. And then there was that horrendous Christmas special they did, which was really, what was that?
They had a lot of things going on. And there was,
And Brian Epstein had died.
Right.
So Brian Epstein.
Brian dying
in late summer 67, he kind of kept them on the track. But once he died, it seemed like they went off the rails a little bit.
Absolutely.
And they didn't have direction on Magical Mystery Tour. The album and the music I love, but the actual TV special that aired Christmas time, 1967, what a mess.
It was a mess.
Really.
Shown in black and white.
And,
John in particular was affected by Brian's passing. He was quite lost.
I was, actually.
Yes, you were.
Well, he was kind of a father figure to John who had grown up without a father.
Yeah.
So Brian kind of served that role.
And now they have become businessmen.
Which they didn't have a head. Paul has a head for business now, but back then
if he didn't take the reins later on, who knows what would happen? Paul didn't start showing interest in the business. I don't know if they would have survived as business.
Well, Paul was the only one that really wanted to work all the time.
Yes.
He's a workaholic. He's the one with the work ethic. The other guys would have just been laying on a couch, watching TV. I mean, seriously.
Writing music and laying
He
around.
had to almost beg them sometimes to come into the studio.
Right.
I mean, part of that was the fact that Paul lives right around the corner from Abbey Road Studios, where the other three guys had these palatial estates in the burbs, like an hour away from London. So Paul was like, hey, let's just go into the studio. He's 5 minutes away. But sometimes it was like pulling teeth for him to get John to want to come into the studio.
Yeah, I could sit and listen to that forever. Just be able to talk Beatles. There's something that just doesn't go away. And I've been a music writer for 20 years, have not interviewed a Beatle, and almost had Ringo, as you said. He was playing Wolf Trap with that all-star band thing he does every year. and it was this close, and then it didn't happen, and I wept, and then I was fine because I wanted to talk to Ringo. But I said it in the open. We've never really met before the Beatles thing, and that was brief. But now I do think we're kin in music and in rock and roll. And I want you to keep in touch with me if anything I can do to because this show's going to go for as long as I can take it. And I think you need sponsorship, and people in pandemics aren't able to come out and be sponsors yet. So I'm talking to some people now, but it's venues and stuff who've had their ass kicked, to be blunt. You know, I mean, it's been really hard. But I want Living Music to keep going, and I'd love to help, Big 100 obviously also promote anything I can because of you. That's why. So thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. This has been so much fun, Steve. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for taking a ride with me, Lisa. Keep in touch. Such a wonderful time talking to Lisa about that super career she's had and still has, and also just hearing her voice for 15 years on the radio and all these incredible bands of our youth and even today, and to hear her as part of that sound is wonderful. So thanks, Lisa, very, very much. And let's keep in close touch, please. You want to go to the Zebra on Facebook, you guys. It's right here. There's the URL right there. Basically go in, sign up for hits, hit like, and then you'll become part of the Zebra Nation. And I think you'll be really, really pleased. It's a lot of amazing local information, features, stuff like my show, which has music, but then you've got incredible shows across our ZTV family with Trash and Treasure, Reading, Writing, and Ralph. We've got Lauren Fisher. We've got Wellness Wednesday. We've got Monica, Elisa Kovac, with Alexandra Maker's Market. It's an incredible swath of local television and local conversations and journeys down people's lives and stuff like that. So please sign up for the Zebra and also go to ZTV and do the same thing, and you'll get a number of hits, just kind of reminders of what we're doing. And the ZTV is on Facebook at that address right there. And then the June 2020 edition of the Zebra newspaper has been out for the month. The July edition is coming very soon, within a few days. But you want to check out the June 2020 edition about the people that keep us safe. All the first responders, fire men and women, police officers, Secret Service guards, everybody around that help keep people safe and sound. Living on Music is a production of Zebra Press. Our Living on Music associate producer and editor is Lainey Delaney, and Zebra Press publisher is Mary Wadland. Well, again, thanks for joining me tonight with Lisa Berigan. What a wonderful ride. Next Monday night, July 5th, is wonderful local singer-songwriter who actually, a bunch of his songs have all been on The Young and the Restless as well. And they run songs during the show sometimes. We can talk to him about that and about his wonderful career. Jason Massey joins me next Monday night at 7:00. Until then, everybody, remember the thing that you can do the best of in your life, whether it's family, friends, even a stranger, just be the good news in someone's life. Take care.